Hello. Hey, y'all. Hey, happy marvelous Monday. I'm excited. Listen, this is the last Monday of the year. Good evening, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon. It just depends on what time you're tuning in. For those of you who are watching live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, welcome and thank you. Welcome to the last and the final Landlord and Tenant Talk of 2024. Today's segment is all about discussing the most incredible year that many of us have had, an incredible year of learning, an incredible year of growing together for landlords as well as tenants, as well as the entire rental community, as a matter of fact. And so today I'm wrapping up, doing a recap of 2024, some of the top topics that I've discussed, I've shared. I'm going to revisit some of those key lessons that I've shared throughout the year. And of course, if you have questions, comments, remarks, or observations, please don't be a stranger. Throw it in the comment section. Again, I'm live on Facebook. I'm live on LinkedIn as well as YouTube. So today's segment is all about reflecting on what we've discussed throughout this year, reflecting on what we've learned, and then also preparing for 2025. So my encouragement, my hope is that 2025, many of you would take the tips, the insights, the information that I've shared throughout the year, as well as today, and apply it into your upcoming year for a greater year, as well as rental success. So whether you've been tuning in all year long, or if this is your first time, I'm glad that you're here. All right, so I'm going to dive in. But before I do that, let me just share that information that I'm giving to you on today is not legal advice. It is the industry's best tips and practices. So I wanted to make sure that I get that in the way. And thank you for those of you who are tuning in on the YouTube channel. I see the comments coming in. Thank you so much for that. And let me just put the disclaimer up. You can see it there, that information I'm sharing again. I have to share this because sometimes people have inquired as to whether or not I am an attorney. I am not an attorney. I am a landlord and tenant expert. I've been in a residential property management space for over 2 decades. So I do not promise to know the law in all jurisdictions. But what I will tell you is this: if you have a burning or a pressing landlord and tenant matter, I would always recommend that you speak to a reputable landlord and tenant attorney. But you want to make sure they're qualified and they understand your circumstance or situation, whether you are a landlord or a tenant. So I wanted to get that in a way. And again, thank you so much. So I'm going to get right into it because I went through all of my topics throughout 2024. And today I am sharing the top 15. So my hope and my goal is to get through the top 15. And I do want to take a moment to highlight some of you. You've shared your testimonies. You've given me feedback. And I want to share that with the viewers on tonight. So I'm going to get straight into it. And again, if you have questions on anything that I'm sharing today, anything landlord and tenant related, please, this is the time. This is the session to do that. I hope to educate you, to empower you, and to engage you. So don't be a stranger if you have a comment, question, remark, or observation. So let me get into it. Here's the first one. Throughout 2024, I've talked a lot about tenant screening and why that is so important. And we know that for many of us who are housing professionals, we're housing providers, we know the importance of screening tenants. But I know that many of you who are landlords or your housing providers, you learn the importance of proper tenant screening techniques, how to avoid issues. And that's one of the things that I always recommend to avoid future issues. And so tenant screening was number one. I shared a lot about the importance of knowing your lease. Now, although I'm sharing these top 15, these subject matters are applicable for landlords as well as tenants. And so for landlords, it's important to know what is in your lease. What do you have in writing? As well as tenants, understanding what is in writing, because that rental lease agreement is a legally binding document. It is a contract. We've talked about that extensively throughout the year. Here is something else that I shared: the importance of fair housing. Knowing what fair housing laws are, this is non-negotiable. Listen, everybody must respect the laws. They are in place to protect tenants from discrimination. There are protected classes on a federal level as well as a local level. I shared some lawsuits against landlords because they violated fair housing laws. And then also letting tenants know and understand that you should always know and understand what your rights are. Here's another big thing I talked about in 2024: the importance of documenting everything. Yeah, it's okay to have a conversation. Yes, you can communicate by text and by email and sending letters as a landlord, right? But you also want to make sure that you document everything. So whether it's a letter, pictures, videos, but it goes for both sides of the aisle, right? Because tenants, you should also make sure that you are documenting situations. And so that was another big thing I shared in 2024. I talked about the importance of rental property maintenance. I shared lawsuits whereas landlords did not make repairs. Tenants took the landlord to court and actually won suits against landlords. And please know and understand that in 2025, you don't want to end up in a situation where you're in court for failure to maintain that rental property. At the end of the day, let me just say this: as a housing provider, as a housing professional, if you are responsible for the maintenance, the upkeep, or the oversight of that rental property or that rental property business, you want to make sure that you're conducting those maintenance and repairs and renovations, because you're only preserving the value of that asset. And if you don't, well, I've shared endless stories throughout this year of what happens when owners and property managers fail to take care of the rental property. Here's another big thing I talked about this year: avoiding rental scams. I know that a lot of people who tuned in, you have learned how to identify red flags. I know that many of you now understand what a red flag is, and how to avoid going down a rabbit hole, right? So, for instance, cash only payment requests. Now, for many of you, you already know the common pitfalls. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I did talk about this because some people were scammed, right? Thinking that they knew the right thing to do, and they ended up being scammed. Here's something else I talked about this year. I shared how important security deposits are and what it covers. Okay. Both sides learn about proper handling of the security deposit, including the legal limits, just depending on that rental property, depending on the jurisdiction, the amount that landlords can ask a tenant to pay for the security deposit, the conditions for deducting any of the security deposit if the money is not going to be returned when they move out, as well as the timeline to return the security deposit. I also talked about tenant rights when it comes to evictions. A lot of tenants have been evicted in 2024. There are a lot of cases in court pending evictions in 2025. But more importantly, as a landlord, I want you to always remember that when it comes to tenant evictions, you must know and follow the legal eviction procedures and the process. In no circumstance or situation can a housing provider, unless permittable by law, can they go into a rental property and just flat out put a tenant out, right? You can't turn off utilities if you're responsible for paying it as a landlord because the tenant has not made their rental payment, or maybe there are some lease violations. And so I talk extensively about that, and just reminding everybody to know what the laws are. Tenants do know and understand that your landlord must take you to court. I talked a lot about rental assistance programs because I want people to understand that if there is some sort of delinquent rent balance, In many jurisdictions and many cities and states, that rental assistance is available, but it's just knowing where to look for the assistance, as well as the questions that you should ask as a landlord to understand what type of program your tenant may be participating in. I also talked about the value of communication a lot this year, how important it is to communicate one with the other landlords as well as tenants, because at the end of the day, it is a relationship. It is a landlord and tenant relationship. One of the things that I tell my clients is this: before they enter into a rental agreement, a lease agreement, consider it like a marriage. For many people, now this may not be true for everybody, but for many people, they don't just jump in bed, they don't just jump into a marriage unless they take time to get to know the person. And so the value of communication, I greatly emphasize that, because at the beginning stage, you want to understand more about each other. Once that person leases up in that rental property, the communications have to continue. They're ongoing. And so the importance of maintaining and handling that landlord and tenant relationship, it hinges primarily on effective communication. I talked a lot about late payments this year, how to handle late payments. When is the payment considered late? What landlord should do? Are you sending out letters to your tenants? Are the tenants aware of any late fees? Are the late fees consistent? Because one month it can't be $56 and the next month it's $85, and then the next month it's $26. There should be consistency in the payments, and that should also be in a lease agreement. So I talked about strategies for managing late rent while maintaining compliance as pertains to the law, because again, tenants do have rights, and even if they don't pay their rent, and if there are some sort of issues going on in the rental property, or maybe something needs to be repaired or replaced, right? The legal requirements, and landlords should always know and understand how to handle those late rent payments. I talked a lot this year about the legal recourse for harassment. I shared a couple of situations and lawsuits that were filed against landlords by tenants because the landlords harassed the tenant. And it cost a couple of landlords thousands of dollars because of harassment per tenant. And they had multiple tenants. I don't think any of you want to end up going down that lane. I promise you that is not something you want to do in your rental property business. I talked a lot this year about inspections as well as repairs, why inspections are important, understanding the value and appreciating the inspections. Again, you want to maintain that rental property because it is an asset. The only way to know what's going on in that property is by conducting inspections. And so if you're a property owner and maybe you don't manage your own property, whoever is managing that property for you should be conducting inspections on a regular basis. I talked about that extensively, as well as making repairs, because if something goes wrong, and worst case scenario, your tenant takes you to court, if you don't know the condition of that rental property, you're going to look extremely bad when you walk into a court of law, stand in front of the judge, and tell the judge that you didn't know that the place was rat infested, that there had been a water leak, there had been mold, the wood dry rotted, there are holes in the floor, whatever the situation is. It would be a very sad day to stand before a judge and not know the condition of that rental property. I also talked a lot about investing in knowledge. It is important as we are going into 2025 to invest in knowledge. Whether you're a landlord, whether you are a tenant, you want to know what legally you can and cannot do. Here's the thing about real estate. Things are always changing. And it's all about location. Location, location, location. Understand how important it is to stay abreast of the laws or the changes that are taking place. And it doesn't matter If it's a market tenant, if it's a tenant participating in some sort of program, if it's a short-term lease, if it's a long-term lease, if it's a lease renewal, it does not matter. Invest in yourselves in 2025. I've shared a lot of information throughout this year. And in the upcoming year, 2025, I'm going to share more information about in-person events that I'm conducting and facilitating. So they're in-person as well as virtual events for landlords as well as tenants. So I shared the top 15. Of course, there were more, but I shared the top 15 topics that I presented to you all in this year. And I hope that in the upcoming year, I don't have to talk so much about lawsuits, although I do know that there are a lot of cases in court currently. But again, I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in and just rocking with me in 2024. Listen, there were a lot of highlights. There were a lot of success stories. And I just wanted to send a shout out to some of you. You have sent emails. You've given me feedback of how tuning in has helped you change your rental business, the changes that you've made in your policies, your procedures, as well as your practices. Listen, I am always passionate about being able to help you all learn and grow. Doesn't matter if you're new, if you're experienced, doesn't matter if you're a landlord or a tenant. This is what I enjoy doing. I enjoy sharing information, which is why I'm here every Monday, 7:30 p.m., somewhere around that time range, Eastern Standard Time. I am asking that for those of you who have not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please find me on YouTube. Smash that subscribe button so that you'll be the first to know when I am live and online, because in 2025, I'm going to again be presenting some in-person, some virtual opportunities for those of you who are interested in that on various subject matters, because my goal is to educate the entire rental community. So I talked about the top 15 takeaways. There are 3 landlords in particular who asked me to share their success stories. And so I do want to do that. I am not going to share their full name, so I'm just going to share their first name. Let me take a look at my notes here. So Sharita, thank you so much for tuning in on that YouTube channel, Sharita, throughout 2024. Sharita, she shared an email that she took away a lot of nuggets. She wrote down a lot of notes, and she made changes in her lease for her new tenants that are moving in. I thank you, John, for tuning in from the LinkedIn page. John said that he is a new investor. He learned some things what are important for whoever will be managing his rental property. He's purchased property in multiple jurisdictions. And so congratulations to you. And then Mike, thank you so much for tuning in, Mike, from the Facebook channel. I wanted to try to pick somebody from each channel because, again, I'm live each week on various platforms. And it is always a pleasure to be able to share information with you all. I talked about the common pitfalls, right? So the mistakes that I've shared in 2024, my hope is that you don't make those mistakes that others have made and have paid for it. Thousands of dollars. Some have had to pay millions of dollars. So you don't want to make those mistakes. Those are common pitfalls to avoid. I try to touch on something each week that will help you with that. But ultimately, and at the end of the day, I just hope that you guys will build better relationships in the rental community, because that's what it's really about. In 2025, things are going to look a lot different for a lot of people. So remember the importance of communication. Remember the importance of not just communicating, but documenting everything in writing. I want to also emphasize the importance of respect between landlords and tenants. And listen, at the end of the day, I get it. I've been doing this for a considerable amount of time. And at the end of the day, everybody may not always agree, and it's okay. It's still a business, and the business must go on. It doesn't stop because there is a temporary disagreement, right? So, my goal is to encourage you all to foster healthier relationships in 2025, right? So, the vision for 2025 is clear: improve relationships, better communication. You want a healthy landlord and tenant relationship. So stay tuned, stick around for new topics. I'm also going to bring in guest speakers. I'm going to share more information and more details about that. Again, I encourage you all, please stay connected with me on my YouTube channel. Many of you have, and you know that I respond to the comments on that YouTube channel. So thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your engagement. Thank you for your support throughout 2024. 2025 is going to be a greater year for many of you. I'm so excited. I can't wait to hear the stories, the feedback. As a matter of fact, let me provide my email address because I want you to be able to reach me when I am not live and online. So let me pull up my email address for you here. And it is now at the bottom of the screen there. That's my email address. You can find me there. info@Landlord Lyfe. That is my email address. And again, 2024 is going to go down in history as one of the first of many years, unfortunately, that we've seen a lot of landlord lawsuits. But my goal is that for those of you who do tune in, you'll know what to do to avoid those pitfalls. So I've shared the top 15 takeaways and a recap of 2024. I hope that I provided something that was helpful for you. I hope to see you in 2025. Please make sure that you show up. If you have questions, comments, remarks, or observations, I'm here for it. I'm Karissa Spann. It has been a fantastic pleasure having you throughout this year or today. Thank you for those of you who are watching the replay. All right. And I am going to say hello, Bishop Tucker. Thank you so much for tuning in. Kingdom blessings. All right. My time is up. I thank you for yours. Listen, everybody, have a happy and a prosperous new year. All right. Bye for now.